Welcome to the Bureau of Occult Affairs. We're here to talk about money. Because money means security. This derives from the original word in Latin, monere. The word in Latin means to secure, but also to warn. So money is a security. To understand this concept that money is a security, you need to go back to the time of the Templars. Because the original money makers were the ones who made the contracts, which were security contracts for pilgrims. There was a problem in the time of the Temple Knights. This problem was unsafety. You see, if you were a believer in Christ and you wanted to travel to the Holy Land, you needed safe passage. And how can you be safe in the 12th century other than armed guards or protection of some sort, which could be enforcement of power? Because there was no law enforcement back then. There was only the law of the sword. You see, knights and bandits and other rogue vagabonds were all about in Europe and the Middle East. So if you wanted to travel, traveling was a rather dangerous endeavor. Now, the Temple Knights are said to have originated because of this problem. Now, I do believe, and we'll talk about this in later episodes, that there were different reasons for the foundation of the Temple Knights, and they were of a spiritual and archaeological nature. One cannot see the role of the Templars as bankers and as guardians of the pilgrims without having a closer look at the archaeology of the Middle East and also the archaeology of Egypt. Needless to say that this direct link is found on today's dollar bill. This old dollar bill that I have here has a very interesting line. It says that these $1,000 are redeemable in gold on demand at the United States Treasury, or in gold or legal tender at any Federal Reserve Bank. The connection between gold and money lies with the Templars. You see, cash means nothing else than a cashier's note. So a cashier was the man behind the desk to whom pilgrims or noblemen would give their gold and their silver in exchange for the cashier's note. Because the Templars, they had the power to protect your gold and silver. And they would give you a security note, money. A small detail is that the word dollar originates from the word teller, Thaler, the North German currency. And the North German Thaler, which became the dollar, has its foundation in the teller. And still we use this word at the ATM, the automatic teller machine.
It's a teller at the bank.
Say again.
It's definitely a teller, Carl.
And to tell, in Dutch, is to count. So when you're telling the coins, the gold and the silver, you are the teller. But also you are the cashier, because you take in the gold and you hand over the money, the security note. And thus the Templars, as protectors of the pilgrims and protectors of money, currency, basically gold and silver, became the first banks. Now, I do believe that the name bank originates because the temple and the Templar Knights and their stronghold were near Fleet Street in London, on the river bank of Thames. So people in London would say, "Where are you going?" "Well, I'm going to the bank, to the river bank, where the Templars had their office and their vaults." Templar money was a signed, secure note. And it was very secure indeed, because wherever you came in the world, you went to another temple office, and you would cash in at the cashier your money in exchange for silver and gold, which you could actually use as money to buy or to donate to the church, or to buy goods that you needed or services, spending the night, food and drink. So the Temple Knights became the first bankers, the first security offices, the insurance companies. They became law enforcers, and they became the first lawyers, the contract makers. Because basically, this is nothing else than a contract. And it's a proxy for that contract. I give you this in exchange for this, and when you hand over this proxy, you will get the same amount. Something will be redeemable in gold or silver. And if something is redeemed, it is basically given back. The Latin word for to give back is redare. So if you are redeemed, you are given back what is owed to you. So redeemable means that you get back what you once laid behind. But of course, this was very profitable for the Temple Knights, because a lot of people did never come back. And their money, their gold and their silver, remained in the vaults of the Temple Knights. Now, in the original contract, the money lending contract, the insurance contract, there must have been a legal passage stating that if you don't come back after a certain period of time, your money would be forfeit to your protector, the Temple Knights. Who lived very poorly, you must imagine. So no one ever suspected that the Temple Knights were in fact after their money, after their gold, after their silver, because they lived very sober lives. So not the individual Temple Knights became wealthy, but the order as a whole became very wealthy and very powerful. Not only had they sort of a monopoly on banking, insurance company loans, securitization bonds, they also had the physical power with their knights to ensure that you were in fact trusted with your money. It would come back. And this was a novelty in the 12th century. And of course, if you look at it, it's a very good system. It's the predecessor of the traveler's check. You check in as a traveler, as a pilgrim, and for a note, you get gold and silver or money. Something that is worth something on the other side of the world. And you don't have to carry it around, as you can be robbed. Or you can lose it. This was the first system of valuable coin in exchange for worthless paper. But the paper wasn't worthless. It was worth everything because it meant security and insurance. What this means for the world to this day is enormous. Our entire system of laws, law enforcement, defense, banking, insurance, and all transactions that you do are based in this system from the 12th century in Europe. It's not strange that we find a lot of banks on Cyprus, which was entirely owned by Templars. It is not strange that we find a lot of banks in Switzerland, which was the hiding place after the Temple Knights were disbanded. After the Temple Knights had to abandon their commanderies and flee for the troops of Philip the Fair. Every step in the modern world you take has its foundation with the Temple Knights. Every time you pay, be it with cash, be it with a credit card, be it with your watch, be it even with Bitcoin, it has its foundation in the original idea of safety and security. Now, the big thing behind all safety and security is and was power. The power to make sure and to enforce your idea of safety and security in passage and travel upon other people who had perhaps evil ideas of robbing innocent pilgrims, or even not so innocent pilgrims. So this whole system worked so well that everybody started using it. So the temple order rose very, very quickly because their original idea, based on sober life and the power of the sword, worked so well that everybody understood that this was the way forward. For instance, in the Netherlands, we have an insurance company which is named the Silver Cross, which you can see as an emblem on the chest of King Baldwin of Jerusalem. So King Baldwin had the silver cross on his chest, and today we have an insurance company called Silver Cross. You can see in the signs of modern day banks and insurance company still a relation with the Temple Knights. It is an illusion to think that the Temple Order as it was still exists. But the ideas were so wonderful that they remained all through the ages. So the Temple Knights were famous because they were so powerful. And their power never ended, because their power not only lay in their order and their name and their swords, but in their ideas. It is not relevant to consider if there's still Temple Knights meeting in secret places and discussing how to rule the world and how to protect the world. Let's not forget. Maybe their idea isn't just to rule the world, but to protect the world. And to show the world that this earth is a spiritual place. In another episode, we'll talk about the fact that they feared nothing, especially not death. This can only come of a full understanding of what life on earth really is. And this knowledge can be found in ancient Egypt, or even further back in Atlantis. And today it is still found on the dollar bill. The watching eye on top of the dollar bill, the all-seeing eye, the capstone. Perhaps you've seen the introductory episode where we show you that a lot of spiritual activity happens in the human brain. And mastery of this concept is a path many Templars must have taken. Many people in the church today still take that path. To find Christ, enlightenment, to become anointed, which is a physical activity which can be accomplished with discipline and training. And abstinence, for instance, abstinence of certain activities or food and drink that might corrupt the holy bond between body and mind, spirit and soul, and the Holy Ghost. So the Templars, not only were they powerful, did they basically invent money and security and traveler's checks and cash and the dollar. They were an esoteric group linked directly to the Roman Church, linked direct to the Roman Church, which had a connection with the old pagan knowledge of the Druids. You see that, for instance, the dome in Cologne, Germany, stands on a holy ground that was once ordained to the god Jupiter. And we will show you places in Europe which have pagan or Roman or Druidic heritage, but were then taken either by the Roman Church or they were taken by the Knights Templar. And of course there was competition in power. Because in every esoteric group, one still encounters matters of material nature. You see, to have power, power corrupts. So total power corrupts totally. And perhaps not with all, but with some. And there were factions. So you can't really say that the Templars were good or they were bad. Or they served God or maybe the devil. There must have been a mix, like there is today in the Roman Catholic Church. Do you know that the Order of the Jesuits, of which our current Pope is a member, originally is a military order? I cannot provide you the truth, because it would take an entire library of books and statements by other people over the course of history, stating things of which they think is the truth, but are contradictory to what somebody else thinks is the truth. All we can do is show you that the ideas of the Temple Knights are very, very much alive in today's society. They form everything we know. And money, and the origin of money, has always been on top of everyone's mind. Because money, as the word explicitly says, is security. And man is born afraid. Every day, we are confronted with our fears. Fear of getting robbed. Fear of getting evicted from our homes. Fear of having something land on our heads. Be it not a piano, then it be the skies. And we all hope to survive every day, every week, every month, every year. And some of us ponder, when will we die? Not every day, but it lives deep inside of every cell. Because the essence of life is the will to survive. And some people feel very strong when they train their body or their mind. And they feel that the fear drops when the body and mind become stronger. They come into positions where they might still be in want of money. But the less you fear, the less money, security you need, and the more freedom you gain. So the Temple Knights must have felt extremely free because they offered security to others. They had security and safety to spare because they themselves feared nothing, not even death. They would protect with their own life the lives and the wealth of others. The same cannot be said of modern-day banks and insurance companies. They have different motives, stockholder motives. Perhaps over the 9 centuries that have passed, things have been corrupted a little. New searches are going on for honest money. But still, it is power that dictates who has what, who earns what, and who keeps what. So justice, which used to be the realm of the Temple Knights, which was enforced by a sword and power. Justice nowadays is something less tangible. It's written down in laws by lawmakers, influenced by banks and security companies. And they meddle with time as well. Have you ever heard of such a silly thing as a future option? And future option trading? And the fact that all commodities can only be bought and sold with future options? So not only did they control money, they controlled the only thing in the world that is real, time. To physically understand time is very difficult, because we have a notion of the past, we have a notion of the present, and we have a notion of the future. But in the watch, and in the sand, the original clock, time is movement. Everything flows, nothing stands still, and the watch turns and turns around its center point. And this turns and turns around its center point, differently dimensionally. So the original clock tells us that time is movement. To understand movement, one has to understand the stars, and this knowledge was available with scientists of an Arabic origin, and they live in a long history of understanding the skies. If you pass through Saudi Arabia and the meteorite that lies in the Kaaba, on which the foundation of an entire religion depends, and if you pass through Egypt and you look at the buildings as they represent constellations in the sky, we all say they were tombs to guide people to the afterlife. There's a big notion of life and death and how the spiritual world works, and how in the physical world planets and stars and constellations align with our life on Earth. And this knowledge, this mathematical, cosmological knowledge, finds its origins in Atlantis. And through Atlantis to Glastonbury Tower, Egypt, and many of the ancient holy sites on our planet. Now, the Templars were in fact also scholars, because true power does not come from the sword, but it comes from knowledge. All great billionaires of this world have one thing in common: they spend a lot of time reading, studying. So that is my advice to the viewers of the Bureau of Occult Affairs. Find as much time as you can every day to study and read to have a profound knowledge of this planet, its riches, its history, a profound knowledge of the world outside this planet, the stars, the planets. You see, there's something called the Saturn cult. We will have an episode especially about it, because it is relevant for the Knights Templar. Their knowledge of the planet Saturn and the moon inspired the building of their first great building when they returned to Europe. This episode is about money, because it sort of has a fascination with everyone, money. People think if I have enough money, then I am free. But it is quite the opposite, because to have a lot of money, basically you have a lot of security, and you only need security if you have fear. And when you have fear, you are not free. So there's a spiritual trick in what the Templars did. They were free because they feared nothing, but they offered security to the fearful. And the fearful were fearful for a good reason, because danger was real. So they needed security. But maybe willingly, maybe unwillingly, did the Templars lay a foundation for what is today a fear-based system. All loans are contracts. Contracts made of, shall I repay? Shall I redeem? And then sometimes it's wavered away. It's forfeit. The debt is forfeit. And sometimes the credit is also forfeit. But in its basis lies the need to survive. But the system has become so complex nowadays. For instance, in the year 2020, the amount of dollars was doubled. The amount of dollars in the world was doubled. This means inflation, and inflation means war. And war means work for the Temple Knights. So one could say that the military-industrial complex, lined with energy companies and banks and telecommunication companies, and everything we have today, is an elaboration on the concept of protecting pilgrims along the temple route and issuing money. You cannot truly think you understand the world of money if you do not understand its origins and its spiritual concept of fear, which is the energy of the devil, and love, which is the energy of God. So if God and love represent freedom, then fear and the devil represent security. Fake security. It's always fake security. Because it was never 100% guarantee that you would come back and that the Templars would protect you along the route. You would still have to make it from one point to the other. They wouldn't accompany you when you carried around your notes. And of course, there's another very important thing, the matter of identification. Who are you? Because the contract is between the Temple Knights and someone. So the identification, if you now go to a bank to open an account, the first thing they need is your identification. So the whole concept of governments and people and IDs, which form a legal document, is needed to participate in the world of money. Our entire world of laws, identification, cash money, digital money, securities, insurances, bank accounts, they are all the same system as was founded by the Knights Templar. You see a lot of videos about people talking about money and the money system. But they never, sometimes they brush and they say, well, the Templars invented it. They never go in deep. What does it mean? What does it mean to have this note in your hand? This was redeemable in gold and silver, once the dollar. Then it became legal tender for any debt. Something changed. Something changed on the dollar note, where there was no gold and silver in the vaults. There was something else backing up the system. The thing that was backing up the system was the system. And something changed drastically when that happened. Because we abandoned the idea of that gold and silver were worth something. The only thing that was worth something is the promise to repay, and we can make debts. And all power came to the Federal Reserve and all central banks. All central banks that issue the money have unlimited power. 2020, quantitative easing of 100% on the entire amount of dollars known to the world. This was a huge event. It was bigger than 1971. It basically ended the concept of value. What's the value of a dollar? If it can buy you something, but in the greater scheme of things, what has happened to that whole system? It's crumbling. It's changing. But the most important thing underlying any money system is individuals such as yourself and your social security number, which you need when you participate in this world. And you need an identification with numbers and signs to get a bank account so you can pay for things, which will keep you alive, or it will keep you as a slave to that same system, willingly or unwillingly. The Temple Knights laid the foundation for the work of the devil. It will take away all our freedom. And therefore, in the year 2024, where we have everything to lose, because we still have freedom, all our freedom is about to end. And we will be stuck in a system that provides us no love, no trust, no God, and no freedom. It will provide us with security, but all security is fear-based, and all fear should be conquered by the mind. And now, for the paradox. If you would like us to make these videos and show you what we think we know about the origins of the Temple Knights and its relevance for today, you want to dive with us into the rich history of everything we know, feel free to make a small donation or to go to our web shop, because we will have something very important for your daily life available. Thank you very much.